Thunder rattled the reinforced glass of the Gold Coast penthouse. Rain pounded Lake Michigan like a volley of bullets. Inside, the air smelled of stale Macallan 25, wet wool, and pure, suffocating panic. Marcus Vance did not just walk out of the private elevator. He stormed out. His designer silk tie was yanked loose. His bloodshot eyes darted wildly around the cold marble foyer. He slammed his leather briefcase onto the island counter, shattering a crystal vase. Red rose petals and jagged glass scattered across the polished floor like fresh blood. "Where is it?" Marcus screamed. His voice tore through the quiet apartment, sharp and dangerous. "Where is the encrypted drive I left in the safe?" Chloe Parker stepped back immediately. Her heels clicked frantically against the granite floor. Her back hit the cold edge of the kitchen counter. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Where is what, Marcus? I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb with me, Chloe," he roared. He lunged across the kitchen island. His heavy hand connected violently with the side of her jaw. The force sent Chloe crashing onto the marble tiles. Scalding tea from her dropped cup splashed across her wrist, burning her skin. White stars exploded across her vision. The metallic taste of copper filled her mouth instantly. She curled into a protective ball on the cold floor, her body trembling violently. She stared at his expensive Italian leather shoes towering over her. She knew this horror all too well, but to understand how a woman who once dreamed of a bright future ended up bleeding on a $10 million floor, we must turn back the clock to where this silent nightmare truly began. To the outside world, Chloe and Marcus Vance were the absolute definition of the Chicago power couple. Marcus was a rising star in commercial real estate development. His disarming smile routinely graced the covers of local business magazines. He could charm donors at charity galas at the Drake Hotel and command boardrooms across the Loop. Chloe, with her soft features, quiet elegance, and sharp artistic mind, appeared to be the perfect partner on his arm. They lived in a sprawling penthouse overlooking the icy blue horizon of Lake Michigan. High above the city noise, their home seemed like an absolute paradise. But behind the soundproofed walls and floor-to-ceiling windows, the penthouse was not a sanctuary. It was a golden vault designed to keep Chloe trapped. Chloe was a talented UI/UX graphic designer. Before her marriage, she worked at a top branding firm in downtown Chicago. She was independent, sharp, and financially secure. Her father, George Parker, had been a respected inspector for the city. He taught her to stand tall, look people in the eye, and trust her own intellect. Everything changed 3 years ago when her father died, suddenly in a tragic car accident on Interstate 90. The grief shattered Chloe. In her most vulnerable moment, Marcus stepped into her life. He played the supportive, protective partner flawlessly. Within months, they married in a lavish cathedral ceremony. The red flags appeared subtle at first. 6 weeks after their wedding, Marcus suggested Chloe leave her agency job. He framed it as an act of love. He told her he wanted to shield her from corporate stress so they could focus on starting a family. Chloe agreed, shifting to freelance graphic design work from home. Slowly and methodically, Marcus drew the curtains on her world. He systematically isolated her from everyone who loved her. He intercepted calls from her sister in Seattle. He created subtle friction between Chloe and her former colleagues until the invitations to lunch stopped entirely. By the end of their first year together, Chloe's entire universe had shrunk to the cold marble floors of their Gold Coast apartment. Then came the psychological warfare. Marcus took absolute control of their finances. He consolidated her bank accounts into his holdings. He managed the substantial life insurance payout from her father's passing, promising to invest it wisely in commercial properties. Whenever Chloe asked simple questions about their savings, Marcus flipped the narrative. "You draw pretty icons on a computer screen, Chloe," he would say with a smooth, patronizing smile, patting her cheek just a little too hard. "Leave the complex financial decisions to the adults. Without me managing your life, you wouldn't survive a month out there." His control extended deep into her daily physical existence. Marcus installed high-definition security cameras in every room of the penthouse under the guise of home protection. He tracked her real-time location through her phone's GPS. He even synchronized her smartwatch to his own tablet, monitoring her resting heart rate throughout the day. If her heart rate spiked while he was away, his call would come instantly, demanding to know who she was talking to or what she was hiding. When psychological control was not enough, the physical intimidation began. It started with small outbursts: a shattered wine glass during dinner, a chair kicked across the dining room over a misplaced set of car keys, a wrist gripped so tightly it left faint yellow bruises that Chloe had to hide beneath expensive silk blouses. Over the second year, the tension turned into calculated violence. Marcus was meticulous. He never struck her face where club wives or building staff might notice. Instead, he targeted her ribs, her lower back, and her thighs. He transformed her skin into a hidden canvas of his private rage. Last winter, when he shoved her down the hallway steps and cracked her collarbone, Marcus drove her to Northwestern Memorial Hospital himself. In the waiting room, his hand rested warmly, almost tenderly, on her knee. He looked the respected orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Harrison, straight in the eye. "My wife is so clumsy," Marcus said smoothly, squeezing Chloe's knee just hard enough to send a sharp jolt of pain through her shoulder. "She slipped on the icy marble in our foyer." Dr. Harrison, a man whose medical research Marcus generously funded, nodded sympathetically without asking a single follow-up question. Chloe sat under the harsh fluorescent lights, staring at the polished hospital floor with hollow, dead eyes, corroborating the lie in silence. By the third year, Marcus was drowning in secret debt from failed real estate gambles in the South Loop. As the financial pressure mounted, his sanity fractured. He drank heavily, his breath constantly smelling of expensive scotch and bitter anxiety. Chloe became his sole outlet for terror. She lived in a constant state of hypervigilance, walking on eggshells, waiting for the inevitable storm to break. Which brought them back to this violent Tuesday night. On the floor of the shattered kitchen, Chloe wiped the blood from her lip with a trembling hand. The smell of rain and ozone drifted through the cracked terrace door. Marcus stepped over the broken glass, his heavy leather boots coming to a stop inches from her head. "I'm going to ask you one last time, Chloe," Marcus whispered, his voice dropping into a lethal register as he reached down and grabbed a handful of her hair, forcing her to look up into his bloodshot eyes. "Where is the drive?" Marcus yanked Chloe's hair backward. Pain shot down her neck. She gasped, her hands clutching his wrist. "I don't know," Chloe sobbed. Her voice rasped against the metallic taste of blood in her mouth. "I don't know the combination to be safe. You know, I don't." Marcus didn't care. The terror driving him destroyed whatever humanity he had left. For 20 agonizing minutes, the penthouse echoed with the sickening thuds of his boots and Chloe's muffled screams. He kicked her ribs. He stomped on her thighs. He punished her for his own ruin. Rain smashed against the glass outside. Lightning illuminated the dark living room in jagged, blinding flashes. Chloe lay bleeding on the icy marble. Her left rib cracked under the brutal weight of his boot. Her vision blurred into shades of gray. She couldn't breathe. The pain was too deep. 3 years of torture had broken her spirit. She closed her eyes. She stopped fighting. She prayed for death. She wanted the dark water of Lake Michigan to swallow her whole. She was ready to let go. Then, A sound cut through the storm. Knock, knock, knock. Heavy, rhythmic, demanding. The sound was impossibly out of place. It echoed off the high ceilings like a gavel in a courtroom. Marcus froze mid-strike. His boot hovered inches above Chloe's chest. His chest heaved. His face was drained of all colors. No one knocked on the penthouse door. Visitors passed 3 layers of armed lobby security. Elevators required biometric keys. Stairwell doors locked magnetically. For someone to stand in that private hallway, they had to bypass an entire fortress without triggering a single alarm. Knock, knock, knock. Marcus. A voice called from the hallway. It was a smooth, deep baritone. It carried a distinct East Coast cadence, calm, precise, and completely devoid of fear. We know you're in there, Marcus. You missed our meeting at the harbor. That was very rude. Marcus stumbled backward. His boots slipped on the puddle of spilled tea and blood. No, Marcus whimpered. His voice squeaked like a terrified child. No, no, no. Not yet. I have until Friday. He scrambled toward the console table. His shaking hands pulled open the top drawer. He pulled out a sleek black 9mm pistol. He fumbled with the magazine, nearly dropping it twice before jamming it into the grip. He racked the slide with a loud metallic clack. Marcus, I'm not going to ask again, the voice outside warned gently. Open the door, or my associates will remove it from its hinges. It's a beautiful door, custom mahogany. It would be a shame. Marcus pointed the weapon at the entrance. His arms trembled violently. He didn't fire. He was paralyzed by absolute dread. A deafening crack shattered the silence. The reinforced steel deadbolt didn't just give way. The heavy mahogany door splintered inward with explosive force. Drywall dust erupted into the air, like smoke. 3 men stepped into the penthouse. The 2 men on the flanks were giants. They wore dark, tailored suits. Their faces were carved from granite, their eyes dead and cold. Hands rested casually near their shoulder holsters. But the man in the center owned the room the moment his leather shoes crossed the threshold. Julian Ross was 34 years old. He ran a massive private logistics network, but to the FBI, he was a ghost commanding Chicago's underworld. He was dressed impeccably in a charcoal 3-piece suit that fit his broad, athletic frame. His dark hair was combed back cleanly. A faint shadow of stubble outlined his sharp jaw. It was his eyes that froze the room. They were an icy, piercing blue, entirely devoid of pity. Julian stepped casually over the splintered wood. He ignored the gun trembling in Marcus's hand. Marcus, Julian sighed, looking around the living room. $3 million for this view, and the roof still leaks. You really shouldn't have stiffed the drywall contractors. Listen to me, Julian. Marcus stammered, his voice cracking. I have the money. I just need 48 hours. The South Loop zoning permits are clear tomorrow. I can liquidate my offshore accounts. You owe my family $3 million, Marcus, Julian said smoothly. His tone remained conversational. You missed 3 payments. You ignored my calls. Then you booked a private charter flight out of Midway Airport to Costa Rica 2 hours ago. Julian tilted his head. Did you really think I wouldn't know? Marcus went chalk white. The gun dropped an inch. I was just going to secure the funds. Then Julian's icy gaze drifted down to the floor. He stopped speaking mid-sentence. The relaxed atmosphere instantly vanished. The air in the penthouse plummeted into Arctic cold. Julian saw Chloe. She was huddled against the kitchen island. Her face was bruised and swollen. Blood trickled from her lip onto her torn blouse. She was shaking uncontrollably, clutching her broken ribs. Julian's posture shifted instantly. The casual posture vanished. He became a coiled predator. A dark, terrifying flicker flashed in his icy eyes. "Who did this?" Julian asked. The question was spoken so quietly it was almost a whisper, yet it sounded louder than the thunder outside. That has nothing to do with this." Marcus stammered, completely misreading the man standing before him. He lowered his gun further. "Julian, please, take the penthouse. Take the cars. I'll sign over the deeds right now." Julian didn't look at Marcus. He took slow, deliberate steps across the room until he stood a few feet from Chloe. His two enforcers shifted, their cold eyes locking onto Marcus. "I asked," Julian repeated, his voice dropping an octave into a lethal growl. "Who did this to her?" Marcus swallowed hard. Panic made him reckless. "She's my wife. She fell. It's none of your business. Take the house." "The house is already ours, Marcus," Julian said coldly. "We placed a lien on it this morning. Your accounts were frozen at noon. You have nothing." Marcus fell to his knees. The gun clattered onto the hardwood floor. He began to sob, a pathetic, sniveling mess. "Please," Marcus begged, crawling forward on his hands and knees. "I'll do anything. I have connections at City Hall. I have her." Chloe's heart stopped. She stared at her husband in utter disbelief. Marcus pointed a trembling finger at Chloe. "Take her. Do you like her? She's yours. Use her to pay off the interest. Rent her out. Do whatever you want with her. Just let me walk away." Silence fell over the room, heavy and suffocating. Julian didn't blink. He slowly turned his head to look at the pathetic man kneeling in rainwater and spilled tea. Then Julian reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. Marcus flinched, waiting for a bullet. Instead, Julian pulled out a pristine white linen handkerchief. He crouched down, his expensive shoes resting on the stained tiles. He ignored Marcus completely, bringing himself down to Chloe's eye level. Up close, Chloe smelled him, cedar, rain, and faint gunpowder. He didn't touch her wounds. He simply held out the handkerchief. His icy blue eyes met her terrified brown ones. 3 years ago, Chloe Parker. Julian spoke directly to her, his voice astonishingly gentle. "I sat in the back row of St. Patrick's Cathedral. I watched you marry a parasite." Chloe gasped. The pain in her ribs was forgotten as shock washed over her. He knew her maiden name. He was at her wedding. "Your father, George Parker, was an honest inspector," Julian murmured. 10 years ago, a corrupt developer tried to frame my family's logistics company. Your father refused a bribe. He told the truth, knowing it would cost him his promotion. The Ross family does not forget their debt." Julian held her gaze. "And we do not forgive a betrayal." Behind them, Marcus gasped. You planned this. You blocked the zoning permits." Julian stood up slowly. The warmth in his eyes vanished as he turned back to Marcus. "I merely accelerated your bankruptcy. But what makes you special, Marcus, is that you are a coward who beats a woman, and a coward who killed his father-in-law for an insurance payout." Chloe stopped breathing. "What did you say?" Marcus recoiled. "No, that was black ice on Interstate 90. Julian gestured to his enforcer. "Enzo." Enzo pulled out a silver, encrypted USB drive. "We cracked your safe this morning, Marcus," Julian said coldly. "We found our financial records. But we also found audio recordings. Bank transfers to a mechanic in Skokie who cut George Parker's brake lines." The room spun. Chloe pulled herself up against the counter. Shock and rage burned through her veins, scorching away her fear. Her father hadn't died in an accident. Marcus had murdered the only person who loved her to build her golden cage. Marcus scrambled backward. "Chloe, he's lying." "I love you." Julian stepped forward. His heavy leather boot slammed into Marcus's chest, pinning him to the floor. "Do not speak her name," Julian growled. He looked over his shoulder at Chloe. This drive has everything. The fraud, the embezzlement, and the proof of your father's murder. Tomorrow, my lawyers will tip off the FBI. But before the law takes him, I need to know what you want me to do with him tonight. Chloe stared down at the monster who had tormented her. Her eyes locked onto Julian's. The helpless victim was gone. Chloe stared down at Marcus. He squirmed beneath Julian's heavy boot like a trapped insect. Tears and snot smeared across his pale, blood-stained face. The polished image of the wealthy Chicago real estate developer was completely gone. In his place was a pathetic, terrified coward. She felt the sharp, agony-laced throb in her cracked ribs. She felt the metallic taste of copper resting on her split tongue. She remembered the endless locked doors, the constant surveillance, and the suffocating terror of the past 3 years. She remembered her father's smiling face before his life was stolen away for an insurance payout. "I don't want him dead, Mr. Ross," Chloe said. Her voice did not shake. It rang out crystal clear against the heavy rain pounding the windows. "Death is an easy release," she continued, her brown eyes locking onto Julian's icy blue ones. "Death means he stops feeling fear. I want him to lose everything. I want his wealth, his reputation, and his freedom stripped away until he has nothing left. I want him to spend the rest of his miserable life inside a concrete box, looking over his shoulder every single second. I want him to live in terror, exactly like I did." A slow, dark smile spread across Julian's face. It was a cold, dangerous expression, yet it carried an undeniable sense of absolute justice. He lifted his boot off Marcus's throat. "Enzo, Leo," Julian ordered smoothly, his voice flat. "Take out the trash. Bring him to the warehouse near the docks. Make sure he understands who he belongs to before the federal authorities step in on Monday." Julian paused, glancing down at Marcus's trembling hands. "Oh, and Enzo? Break his hands. Both of them. Clumsy men shouldn't handle real estate or lay hands on women." "No, please. Chloe, save me." Marcus screamed as the two massive enforcers yanked him up by his armpits. He thrashed and kicked frantically, but his strength meant nothing against the two granite-like men. They dragged him across the wet marble floor. His designer shoes left long black scuffs on the white tile. His hysterical shrieks echoed down the private hallway until the heavy elevator doors slid shut, cutting off his cries instantly. Silence descended upon the penthouse. The loud storm outside was the only sound remaining. Julian did not rush toward Chloe. He did not invade her physical space. He stood a few feet away, letting the heavy quiet settle. "We cannot hand that USB drive directly to the police, Chloe," Julian explained, his tone calm and educational. "In the American legal system, evidence obtained through an illegal break-in will be thrown out under the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. Marcus's high-priced lawyers would walk him out of court in a week." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek phone. "Instead, my legal team will drop anonymous, untraceable tips to the FBI, the IRS, and the Chicago Police Department tonight. We will give them the exact server locations and bank accounts. The federal agents will obtain a legal search warrant by tomorrow morning. They will seize the evidence themselves. Marcus Vance will be arrested through ironclad legal protocol." Chloe listened, absorbing every word. For years, Marcus had convinced her that she was helpless against his influence and wealth. Now, she saw his empire collapsing under the weight of true strategy. Julian turned to her fully. He extended his right hand toward her, palm open, keeping his distance. "Come with me, Chloe Parker," he said gently. "A car is waiting in the private garage downstairs. I have a secure estate in Lake Forest. A private doctor is waiting there. She will treat your injuries without asking questions or filing forced reports. Your time in the dark is over. Chloe looked at his outstretched hand. It was calloused and strong, the hand of a man who commanded violence without hesitation. Yet, for the first time in 3 long years, she felt no threat. She reached out. Her bruised, trembling fingers brushed against his warm, steady palm. The crisp scent of cedar and rain wrapped around her, grounding her chaotic thoughts. 20 minutes later, a sleek black SUV glided through the iron gates of the Ross estate in Lake Forest. The property was massive, surrounded by dense oak trees and high stone walls. Julian led her inside the quiet mansion. He walked her up a wide grand staircase to a bright, spacious guest room on the 2nd floor. A warm fire crackled in the stone fireplace. The room smelled of fresh lavender and clean linen. A female doctor stepped forward, greeting Chloe with a soft, respectful nod. She worked quickly and efficiently, taping Chloe's cracked ribs, cleaning the cut on her lip, and providing mild pain medication. Throughout the entire process, Julian stood quietly by the doorway, giving Chloe total privacy. Once the doctor finished and left the room, Julian stepped closer to the bed. He did not cross the threshold into her personal space. Instead, he pulled a silver key from his pocket and placed it on a small mahogany table right beside the doorframe. "This is the key to this room, Chloe," Julian said, his eyes meeting hers with absolute seriousness. "Every security camera in this wing has been shut off. No one enters this room without your permission. You are a guest here, not a prisoner. That door locks from the inside, and only you hold the key." Chloe looked at the silver key resting on the dark wood. In Marcus's penthouse, every door was a trap. Every lock was meant to keep her inside. Every room was watched by hidden lenses. But here, in the home of Chicago's most feared criminal, she was offered absolute control over her own boundaries. "Thank you, Julian," Chloe whispered. Her voice was raspy, but the hollow despair had vanished. Julian bowed his head, slightly. "Get some rest, Chloe. Tomorrow, your new life begins." He stepped back into the hallway and pulled the heavy oak door shut. A clear, sharp click echoed through the quiet room as the lock engaged. Chloe stood up slowly, her body aching with deep physical pain. She walked to the door, turned the brass handle from the inside, and locked it securely. She walked over to the large glass window. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving clear night skies over the Lake Forest woods. She pressed Julian's crisp linen handkerchief against her chest. She closed her eyes and took a deep, clear breath. For the first time in 3 years, her lungs expanded without fear. The golden cage had shattered, and the long nightmare was finally over. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Lake Forest estate, washing away the shadows of the past 3 years. Chloe sat on the plush leather couch in the private therapy room. Across from her sat Dr. Evelyn Vance, a renowned trauma specialist. For the first few weeks, Chloe struggled to speak. Her body reacted out of muscle memory. Every loud noise made her flinch. Every shadow in the hallway made her heart race. "Psychological abuse works by making you give away your authority," Dr. Evelyn explained gently during one of their sessions. "Marcus did not control your value, Chloe. You allowed him to define your reality because you were isolated and terrified. Real healing begins when you reclaim your narrative." The words struck a deep chord inside Chloe. She made a conscious decision. She stopped looking at herself as a broken victim waiting for pity. She looked in the bathroom mirror every morning. She stared directly into her own brown eyes, accepting the faint scar on her cheekbone and the healing yellow bruises on her torso. She stopped hiding. "Manipulative control only works when I give permission," Chloe whispered to her reflection. "I will never give my power away again." Physical healing followed mental clarity. Chloe realized she needed to feel strong in her own body. She approached Enzo, Julian's senior head of security, in the estate's private gym. "Teach me how to fight," Chloe demanded, her posture rigid. "Not for sport. Teach me how to defend myself." Enzo, a massive man with scarred knuckles and cold eyes, looked at her approvingly. They began intense daily training sessions. Enzo did not teach her flashy boxing moves. He focused on practical escape techniques. He taught her how to break free when someone grabbed her wrists from behind. He showed her how to drive an elbow into an attacker's solar plexus, how to use leverage to throw a heavier opponent, and how to fight off someone pinning her to the floor. Sweat poured down Chloe's face every morning. Her muscles burned. Her knuckles bled against the heavy leather bags. But with every blow, she smashed the ghost of Marcus Vance out of her system. During one grueling session, Enzo pinned her arms to the mat, mimicking the exact position Marcus used during his rage. Panic flared in Chloe's chest for a second. Then, her new training kicked in. She used her hips for leverage, planted her foot, and flipped Enzo off her body, thrusting her palm violently upward, stopping an inch from his nose. Enzo grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Good. You're ready." "I am not training to fight random strangers," Chloe said, catching her breath. Her voice was steady and hard as steel. "I am training so no man can ever back me into a corner again." With her mind clear and her body strong, Chloe turned her focus toward financial independence. She refused to live off Julian's wealth. She opened her laptop, set up a dedicated workspace, and launched an independent branding and UI/UX design agency named Phoenix Digital. She worked relentless 18-hour days. She reached out to former professional contacts, explaining that she was back in the industry independently. Her reputation as a brilliant designer quickly opened doors. Recognizing her talent, Julian approached her with a legitimate business offer. His logistics company, Ross Transport, was expanding into legal commercial shipping across 5 states. However, their digital infrastructure and brand image were outdated. "I don't offer charity, Chloe," Julian said, placing a thick file on her desk. "I need a top-tier digital ecosystem for my fleet operations. Deliver a complete rebrand and a custom UI/UX dispatch platform. I will pay the market rate." Chloe accepted the challenge. For 2 months, she immersed herself in the project. She designed a sleek, high-efficiency logistics dashboard that streamlined fleet tracking, reduced delivery delays, and automated compliance reports. She created a sharp, modern brand identity that projected transparency and absolute authority. Her work transformed Ross Transport into a fully compliant, highly profitable corporate giant, completely distancing Julian's legal operations from his family's shadow history. One evening, Julian signed the final delivery contract, handing her a certified check for $500,000, her agency's first massive corporate payout. "You didn't just redesign a platform, Chloe," Julian said, looking at the impressive metrics on his screen. "You modernized my entire enterprise." "We are business partners now, Julian," Chloe replied, accepting the check with a proud, confident smile. "I earn my own way." 6 months after the violent night at the penthouse, Chloe stood by the large window of her private office in the Lake Forest estate. She wore a tailored black blazer, her dark hair styled neatly, her skin glowing with health and strength. She was no longer the fragile, terrified girl shivering on a marble floor. She was a self-made businesswoman, mentally unbroken, physically capable, and financially independent. Her desk phone rang. Chloe picked up the receiver. "Ms. Parker," a crisp voice spoke from the line. "This is Prosecutor Vance's office from the Cook County Circuit Court. The federal and state joint indictments against Marcus Vance have been finalized. His criminal trial begins tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Chloe held the phone firmly. Her heart rate remained completely steady. Not a single trace of fear touched her mind. "Thank you for the update," Chloe said calmly. "I will be in the front row." She hung up the phone and looked out at the sun setting over the trees. The hour of final reckoning had arrived. Flashbulbs exploded outside the Cook County Circuit Court building in downtown Chicago. Reporters shouted questions into a wall of microphones. Cameras tracked every movement on the granite steps. Chloe Parker stepped out of a black town car. She wore a tailored crimson power suit that hugged her shoulders with crisp authority. Her dark hair was pulled back into an immaculate, tight knot. Her skin glowed. Her posture was unbroken. Beside her, Julian Ross walked in silence. He wore a sharp charcoal suit, flanked by 2 quiet security guards. He did not touch her arm. He did not hover. He walked beside her as a peer, a silent shadow of absolute authority. Inside courtroom 402, the air was cold and heavy with the scent of aged mahogany and polished brass. Chloe took her seat in the front row of the gallery. She crossed her legs calmly, resting her hands in her lap. A side door clicked open. 2 armed bailiffs led the defendant into the room. Marcus Vance looked hollowed out. The arrogant real estate developer had completely vanished. He wore a faded orange jumpsuit. Heavy iron shackles clanked against his ankles with every awkward step. His wrists were chained tightly to a leather belt around his waist. His hair was thinning and unwashed. His face was sunken, gray, and covered in nervous sweat. His eyes darted around the courtroom in paranoid terror. Then Marcus saw Chloe. He froze mid-step. His eyes widened, searching her face desperately. He looked for the timid, terrified woman he had beaten and locked in a penthouse for 3 years. He searched for a shred of fear or vulnerability he could manipulate. Chloe met his gaze directly. Her brown eyes were cold, sharp, and clear as ice. She did not flinch. She did not look away. Instead, a slow, razor-sharp smile spread across her face. It was a terrifying, beautiful expression of absolute victory. Marcus physically recoiled. His knees buckled slightly before a bailiff shoved him forward into the defense chair. In that agonizing second, Marcus realized a devastating truth. He had not just lost his freedom. He had failed to destroy her. She had completely transcended his cruelty. Judge Robert Vance took the bench. The courtroom fell into absolute silence. The prosecution presented an avalanche of evidence. The encrypted USB drive provided ironclad proof. They displayed bank statements showing illegal money transfers to the mechanic who cut George Parker's brake lines. They played recorded phone calls detailing commercial real estate fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. On the count of first-degree conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty, the jury foreman announced. On the counts of grand embezzlement and wire fraud, guilty. Judge Vance slammed his wooden gavel down. The sound cracked through the room like thunder. Marcus Vance, for your heinous crimes and calculated destruction of human life, you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, the judge declared coldly. You will serve this sentence at the Statesville Maximum Security Correctional Center. Marcus collapsed back into his chair, sobbing hysterically. The polished monster was reduced to a weeping child. As the bailiffs yanked Marcus up to lead him away through the side exit, his path passed right by Chloe's seat. He leaned toward her, snot and tears streaming down his face. "Chloe, please." Marcus whimpered, his voice high-pitched and pathetic. "Tell them to stop. I did it for us." Chloe stood up smoothly. She stepped closer to the wooden barrier. She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping into a quiet, deadly whisper that only he could hear. "You once told me the Gold Coast penthouse was a perfect golden cage, Marcus," Chloe said, her voice smooth and devoid of all anger. Now, enjoy your concrete box. There are no biometric keys or concierge buttons in Statesville. Marcus gasped, his face draining of all remaining color as the bailiffs dragged him through the heavy metal door. Chloe turned away. She did not watch him leave. She walked out of the courtroom into the bright afternoon sun. As they reached the marble plaza outside, Chloe stopped by a large iron trash receptacle. She reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out her old titanium wedding ring, the last physical link to 3 years of torture. She held it over the dark opening. She opened her hand. The ring dropped into the darkness with a faint, final clink. She turned to Julian, who stood quietly on the steps. "He will spend every day of his life looking over his shoulder," Chloe said softly, taking a deep breath of the cool Chicago air. "That is enough. The warden at Statesville owes my family a favor," Julian murmured, his icy blue eyes fixed on her. "Marcus was placed in the general population. He won't find a single friend inside those walls. Let him live in his terror," Chloe replied, her tone completely calm. "I have a life to build." She walked down the steps toward the waiting car. Her stride was light, powerful, and free. The ghost of her past was buried forever beneath the marble steps of the courthouse. Late autumn sunlight painted the Lake Forest estate in a breathtaking, warm glow. The afternoon golden hour turned the surrounding oak forest into a brilliant sea of amber, crimson, and gold. High above the tree line, the sky shifted from vivid orange to a serene, deep violet. Chloe stood on the grand stone balcony of the master study. She wore an elegant silk blouse the color of rich burgundy, her posture completely relaxed, yet brimming with quiet confidence. In her right hand, she held a crystal glass of vintage Barola wine. The cool autumn breeze brushed past her cheek, carrying the crisp scent of pine needles, damp earth, and wood smoke. Below, the calm, glassy surface of the estate's private lake reflected the sunset like a liquid mirror. There were no shadows here, no hidden cameras, no soundproofed walls designed to trap a woman's screams. The terrifying nightmares of locked doors and violent outbursts had vanished completely, replaced by a profound, unbroken inner peace. The heavy oak door behind her opened with a soft, familiar click. Julian stepped out onto the balcony. He wore a crisp white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms, his dark blazer left inside. The cool air swirled around them as he walked over, stopping right beside her. His broad shoulder lightly brushed against hers. "The warden at Statesville called my office an hour ago," Julian murmured, his voice a low, steady baritone. "Marcus was transferred to the high-security block after an altercation in the yard. He will spend his days isolated, surrounded by men who despise cowards." Chloe took a slow, deliberate sip of her wine. The rich, earthy flavor rested smoothly on her tongue. She looked out over the glowing forest, her expression completely untroubled. "I don't care where they put him, Julian," Chloe said softly. Her voice was steady, free from anger, resentment, or bitterness. "I used to think that hating Marcus was the only way to honor my father's memory. But holding on to hatred just keeps you chained to the person who hurt you. I have completely let him go. I am finally free." Julian turned to look at her. His icy blue eyes caught the warm, golden light of the setting sun. The intense, predatory stillness he usually carried melted away, replaced by genuine admiration and respect. He didn't see a fragile victim who needed a dark angel to save her. He didn't see a debt to be collected for a past favor to her father. He saw a brilliant, unbroken woman who had walked through the fires of hell, rebuilt her own strength, and emerged as a powerhouse in her own right. "You transformed your own life, Chloe," Julian said, his voice carrying an uncharacteristic softness. "I provided a safe space, but you did the work. You healed your mind. You trained your body. You built a thriving enterprise from scratch. I didn't save you to add a debt to my ledger. I stood by you because the world is a darker place without your fire in it. Chloe turned toward him, her brown eyes meeting his icy blue ones with fearless clarity. Then don't look at me as someone you saved, Julian, Chloe said, stepping closer. The crisp scent of cedar and rain drifted off his skin. Don't look for a victim to protect. She raised her crystal glass slightly, tapping it gently against his. The clear, ringing sound echoed softly in the quiet autumn evening. Ask for a partner, Chloe declared, her voice filled with absolute certainty. A slow, genuine smile broke across Julian's sharp face. It was not his cold, dangerous mob boss expression. It was warm, real, and deeply human. A partner, Julian agreed, his breath hitching slightly at the raw authority in her words. He reached out, his warm, calloused hand gently cupping her face. His thumb brushed against her cheekbone, right over the spot where an old scar had long since faded into smooth, healthy skin. He did not pull her forcefully. He waited, offering his touch with complete respect for her boundaries. Chloe leaned into his palm. Her heart beat a strong, steady rhythm against her ribs. Julian closed the small distance between them. His mouth met hers in a passionate, consuming kiss. It was not the tentative gesture of a savior taking pity on a broken soul. It was the fierce, mutual claiming of equals. Chloe kissed him back with equal intensity. She wrapped her arm around his neck, her fingers tangling in his dark hair. The last ashes of her past blew away into the autumn wind, leaving behind a foundation of unshakable strength. 3 years ago, Chloe Parker had bled in silence behind locked doors, praying for a savior to end her misery. But the man who walked through the splintered mahogany door had not just given her safety. He had handed her the tools to reclaim her own life. She stood tall in the golden hour, her head held high, her smile radiant and free. She was no longer the unseen wife hiding in the dark. She was Chloe Parker, a self-made woman, an untouchable partner, and the absolute queen of her own destiny. All shadows must fade before the truth, and every pain is simply the start of a beautiful rebirth. Always remember, the right to write a new chapter of your life is forever in your hands. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below so we know we're walking this journey together. Hope to see you on the next page.